So thanks, Regis CNCF, for the opportunity to be here talking. Thanks, guys, for coming. And let's dive into you. Have a short time to talk. Is it better? Too loud? Is it better now? Okay. So have a long presentation to go through. I want to talk a little bit about CNAPP, Cloud Application Protection Platform, and possibly do a demo at the end of the day. So yeah, let's begin. My name is Regis Martins, or Regis Martins, and I work for Fortinet in cloud security there. Those are my links on LinkedIn and GitHub as well. If you guys want to add me, feel free. So let's dive into it. So let's start looking into what CNAPP is, right? So basically, CNAPP is a concept that was created by Gartner. How many of you know Gartner here? Yeah, everybody. Hey, yeah. So Gartner, they produce those reports about solutions in the market. So they come up with this definition for CNAPP. It's a cloud-native application protection platform. It's basically a unified and tightly integrated set of security and compliance capabilities designed to secure and protect cloud-native infrastructure and application as well. So the idea here is really to have one solution that will cover most of the compliance and security capabilities that you need to have in cloud to protect your infrastructure, your cloud infrastructure, and also to protect your application. If you want to take a look on the Gartner report there, you can go, the link, we'll share the presentation later, but you can go into the link and take a look into more details about how Gartner describes that. So the way that Gartner classifies the capabilities for CNAPP, they have like 3 categories for the capabilities. It talks about core capabilities, or this is the bare minimum that your platform or solution needs to have in order to be called CNAPP platform. And it also have the recommended capabilities for CNAPP and optional capabilities. So if you look into the market, the vendors out there that are selling CNAPP solutions, they will have different capabilities. It's not one vendor having all the capabilities, but vendors, they have different capabilities. Of course, all of them will have the core capabilities, otherwise they cannot be named their product as CNAPP, but the recommended and optional capabilities, it will vary according to that. So just not create a lot of confusion, just talk about the core capabilities. And if you're going to cover all the capabilities here, we'd spend a few hours talking about CNAPP here, but let's focus on the core capabilities for CNAPP. And according to Gartner, the core capabilities for CNAPP would be CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management, Kubernetes Security Posture Management, or KSPM, CIEM, that you call, just to make a difference from the SIEM, S-I-E-M, so call it CIEM, which is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. And it also talks about the SCAM, infrastructure as a code scanning, and container scanning, register scanning. So CNAPP platform needs to have scanning on it. And CWPP is a cloud workload protection platform. Inside of a CWPP, there are a few capabilities inside CWPP as well that are mandatories in there. So it needs to have a CWPP running agentless. You cannot have a CNAPP solutions only with an agent-based CWPP. You need to have an agentless capability. Point in time to compare the evolution or the events that happen in your workload. You need to have a history on that as well, and attack path. Attack path is basically a graph database that you have in there that will correlate all the resources and how they interact between each other, all your cloud resources, right? And how is the interaction between them, right? So before I dive into the capabilities and everything, I would like to talk about why FortiNAPP. Why is that important? Why do you need FortiNAPP? Why FortiNAPP or CNAPP matters? Sorry for saying FortiCNAPP, because Fortinet happens to have a product that calls FortiCNAPP, but I'm talking here about the CNAPP platform, okay? I'm not quite there yet. So basically, why CNAPP matters, first of all, is the consolidation. So it can replace, when you are in cloud, you start adopting security tools for your environment. Okay, so you're adopting security tools for looking into the configurations, maybe a CSPM platform, something to look into your identities as well, right? Or your Kubernetes environments. And at the end of the day, most of the companies, they end with something between 8 and 16 different solutions to protect their cloud environment. The idea and the concept of CNAPP is to bring all those solutions in one solution. And so you can replace the other solutions that are siloed solutions, right? They don't have integration. And at the end of the day, you end with a lot of solutions. They have a lot of overlap between them and still leaving gaps or things that are not covered for any of those solutions, right? So when you get into CNAPP, so you can reduce those number of solutions and also can get what we call contextual visibility, understand the relationship between the information that are collected for different solutions. So you have a solution looking to your secure posture management in cloud, but also can correlate with the information that you have for your identity and for the version of OS that you're using in your cloud workload and so on. So all the integration, you can bring all that information to the same place and correlate that integration to have a more holistic visibility into the security posture for your environment, right? Of course, it's easier to do remediation and have a holistic view of what's happening as well. I have also all the hooks to be integrated into your CI/CD pipeline. So all the APIs to be integrated into their CI/CD pipeline, and in that way, reduce the alert fatigue. So can prioritize things that really matters. So let me give you an example here. For example, you have a workload, let's say a container. In that container, you have one vulnerability in there, right? You detect that there is a critical vulnerability. But how do I say that it's really critical? Well, that vulnerability, maybe it can be exploited if the container has or is accessible via internet, or if the container is exposed to the internet. It can be classified as a critical vulnerability, but if my workload doesn't have access to the internet or cannot be accessed via internet, so how can that vulnerability be exploited? There is no way, right? So that vulnerability now is not very important because it cannot be exploited, right? It can, and so that's why it's important to have all these technologies working together, so you can really understand how your workload can be compromised and what's important for you to focus on correcting or mitigating in your cloud environment. Okay, so let's go and start talking about CSPM really quick here. So CSPM basically Cloud Security Posture Management, and it will monitor your cloud environment. Basically, all the configurations that you have there, it will be monitored and it will be compared against what you call benchmarks or compliance frameworks, if you will. So CIS benchmark, NIST, PCI DSS, HIPAA, AWS has a bunch of guardrails and recommendations, best practices for the way that you need to configure your cloud environment. So CSPM basically, you look into your environment, all the configurations that you have in your environment and compare with those frameworks. For example, it can detect a S3 bucket with public access or overly permissive security groups that you may have in your environment. You have the similar thing for KSPM, which is look into the configurations that you have for your Kubernetes cluster as well. So you analyze the Kubernetes cluster configurations or back policies, if you have network policies around your pods inside the Kubernetes cluster, and look into the API events happening from your Kubernetes cluster in and out. And for example, what you can see using the KSPM would be flag containers that are running as root, right? Or missing resource limits into your YAML, or network policies, just to open access to any pod, can talk to any pod inside of your Kubernetes environment. So that's another tool. That's part of the CNAPP as well, right? The next one is CIEM, the Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. Basically, it will look into your identities that are in cloud, maybe identities for users or for service accounts as well. Look into all the permissions that you have, the permissions that are being used, if you have any dormant account inside cloud, or if you have any account with too many permissions, and that are not being used because it also monitors all the API calls. It understands what are the permissions that are being used inside of your cloud environment, and it will tell you if you have a identity that has entitlements that are not being used. So you can, ideally, best practice of security is to apply the principle of least privilege, always, right? I don't want to give permission to an identity to do something that it doesn't need to do. Otherwise, I would give a root account for everybody. Everybody can do whatever, and it would never fail, right? But there is this security principle that you need to give only the permission for what it needs to be doing, right? So it can be used to find unused admin roles or dormant service accounts with excessive permissions in your cloud environment. Scans, so have the container and code scanners as well. So most of the platforms, they have a ASPM, or they call Application Security Posture Management, with all these scanners, DAST, SAST, or dynamic and security application security testing, dynamic and static security application testing that will look into weaknesses in your code. So when you're coding Python or .js or whatever language you're coding, it will look into the code and find the weaknesses that are in there in your code. Maybe you're not following the best practices, or if you try to hard code secrets or open backdoors for you to have access to your application later on. Right. It can identify using those scanners. Also, of course, this can to third parts. So all the libraries and packages that you are using in your code, nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. Everybody uses packages and libraries when you're coding. It will also scan for those vulnerabilities and tell you what are the vulnerabilities in the libraries that you are using, right? Also, and you do that for your code and also for infrastructure as code, right? If you are using Terraform, ARM, or CloudFormation, it will be able to look into those codes, into that code, and give you recommendations or for the best practices for infrastructure as code as well. Also, you have integration in the CI/CD pipeline. So if you are using CI/CD pipeline, everything can be automated. Have configuration with the repositories as well. It can scan your repositories for container images, for code, and so on. All of these part of CNAPP. And then finally, CWPP, Cloud Workload Protection Platform. basically, you can think about it. I don't like this comparison, but sometimes it helps to understand. But like a antivirus that will be running in your workload running in cloud, right? So you have a workload running there, and you be monitoring a lot of things, right? So file integrity management, or FIM. You look into the files that you have in that container, in that EC2 instance or VM, whatever you're running in cloud. You look into files into there, if they have been modified or not, and all the syscalls that your application is doing towards the kernel can be monitored, and look into malicious behavior happening inside of your workload, and also for malware that may be installed, right? Or downloads that came out of the internet, files that were downloaded from the internet, and so on. It helps to detect crypto miners, reverse shell, so all the commands that are being executed by your workload are monitored as well, right? And unauthorized network connections, connecting to some part of the network that you don't have to, it will detect as well, right? And well, finally, some points of integration. So the requirements for CNAPP as well, it needs to work with the major clouds, Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle, IBM. Oh, that's a requirement as well. And it will monitor and have access to your cloud APIs. So it will monitor all the API calls that happens for cloud. It will be integrated, as I said before, to your CI/CD pipeline. You can have agent-based CWPP, Cloud Workload Protection. It can be agent-based. It's a lightweight agent that is installed inside of your container or inside of your VM. Or it can be agentless. How do you run an agentless? So basically, the process is to take a snapshot of your workload, and then start a new VM with that snapshot, and then run the scanner in that new VM to see if you can detect any malicious activities or vulnerabilities in libraries or something weird happening into there, right? And the graph database, as I mentioned before, is used to point out the correlations between the agents and create something that we call attack path, right? So that's another requirement, to have an attack path that helps you to understand. For example, I have a database that is vulnerable. So how an attacker would get into the database? When it comes to the internet, going to an internet gateway, passing through a secure group, getting to a EC2 instance, and then from there getting to your database. So all of these will be traced back to this graph database. Okay, and so yeah, talk is cheap, right? Show me the code. I don't have any code to show you, but I will do a demo of a product here. And yeah, let's see here. So this is one, so we have many CNAPP vendors in the market as well. So Fortinet is one of them. Oh, I'm not sharing. Let me stop the presentation here for a second. Maybe it works. Okay, so we have the FortiCNAPP or Lacework FortiCNAPP. It is CNAPP platform. So let me show you a few things. When you talk about CSPM, that we compare your cloud environment configurations to a framework. For example, if you go here to compliance, and you have for cloud, which will look into your cloud environment, or Kubernetes as well. You can look into cloud here. So it will show my, okay, Let me put it here, maybe better connection. So it show you all the frameworks that I can use here to compare my environment to. So frameworks basically are a set of best practices that you need to follow in order to have your cloud environment properly configured. One of a good way to deploy frameworks is using landing zones. Who knows landing zones here? Have you heard about landing zones? So landing zones is basically a deployment of a cloud environment following all the frameworks, secure frameworks for you that AWS, Azure, all the big cloud service providers can give you access to. So it will basically compare your environment. For example, let's take a look in one of them. Here, it will compare your environment and will tell you what are the policies that are not following or not compliant with those compliance frameworks here. So how about some critical and so enable multi-factor authentication for root user access. So that's probably not being enabled here. That's why I have a non-compliant, or actually this is compliant. Right, so I have a compliant, one non-compliant here. So ensure credentials unused for 45 days or more are disabled. So probably I have one of these credentials are non-compliant here. So this backdoor, it's kind of suspicious credential to have in your environment, right? So yeah, so that's the CSPM. So if you look into identities, the key will show you the top risk identities here, and you have information about the identities at risk here. So this tells you what risk is, what it allows. Here can investigate for this specific identity here, and it will show you in entitlements. Entitlements basically are the permissions that you give to a specific identity. So I granted this identity with 41,485 entitlements, permissions to do stuff in cloud, and actually I'm using 2. So it's a little over permissive there, right? So do I really need 4,100 entitlements? So it gives you all this visibility into there. Then security, code security as well. So you can see all the vulnerabilities in your repositories that you have for, let's open here, for infrastructure as a code, right? So infrastructure as code, vulnerabilities, and it tells you what kind of vulnerability it is. It tells you where in the code you can find that specific vulnerability. So you can, how many more minutes do I have? You said
we're at 0.
But... 0? Okay, yeah. Okay, no, that's just a short demo here for you guys. If you guys are interested in knowing more, you can, of course, do a more detailed demo anytime. Just look for me. As I said, very happy to be here. Thank you for coming. We have a few fellow friends here, Master Chris Man and Moro or Akaki. They work with me at Fortinet. I don't know if you have more people at Fortinet here. I can't see, but I think that's true. Thanks everyone for the opportunity and for coming, and enjoy the rest of the event.